When you join the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, how long of a process are we talking? You join the local writers center and you're dipping a toe in, or you just go, you dive in head first and join everybody? What's the period?
Yeah, it was so I think my toe dip was probably about 10 years ago, maybe around 2011. That was maybe like my first thought. I could be off by but roughly then. And actually, interestingly, after that, I had this idea for a novel, and I decided to take a novel writing class. And I went to like 2 sessions, and the teacher, and I just realized I couldn't do it then. Like I couldn't get 25 pages of the novel. I like, with everything going on in my life, I couldn't do it. And I told the teacher that, and I sort of expected even if she didn't say it, her to be thinking, well, if you're really a writer, you make the time. And she was just like, you know what? Like, you're welcome anytime. If you want to do it, if you want to just stay in the class and not submit, that's okay. But she was also like, yeah, it happens. There are times in your life where you can't write a novel, like that's okay. And honestly, the fact that she was so kind of understanding, and I think it's given permission for me to be more understanding of myself. I think so often as writers, we beat ourselves up because like we didn't write yesterday or whatever. So, but she was like it. I do set deadlines for myself. I do try to meet them, but also it was really good, I think, early on to have like, yeah, it's okay. Maybe this isn't the season for you to start a novel. Like that doesn't mean anything about whether or not you can be a writer in the future. It just means this isn't the season. So that was maybe the next year. Then the Writers Center, so they have some longer classes, like 8 weeks. Now they actually have year-long classes, but they also had short classes, like 2-hour sessions, which were awesome because you could go from 8 to 10 on a Saturday morning, get in your writing and then just go on with everything else you had to do that day. And at one of those sessions, I mentioned to the instructor, Catherine Johnson, that I was interested in writing for children, and she's done romance and mystery and other stuff. So she's very familiar with all the like RWA at the time and mystery writers. And so she was like, oh, there's SCBWI. So this was a couple years in, and I was maybe sort of trying my hand at a picture book, but just really dabbling. Actually, you know what I was doing then that I think was like the most helpful thing to my writing? In my first class, Ursula Le Guin's book, Steering the Craft, was recommended. And I highly recommend that book. And it has lots of craft exercises. I actually spent a lot of time just working through craft exercises, which I think later on, I was building muscles I didn't know I needed, but was really, really helpful. So anyway, long story back to it. She recommended SCBWI. So I Google it and, oh, look, there's registration. There's going to be a conference in a couple months. So I went to my first SCBWI conference and met some nice people and, eventually joined a writers group. But even then it was still, another couple of years before I tried to write my first novel. So that would have been in 2016 that 2014 late 2014, like 2014, 2015, I first tried to write a novel. So it's a process, as you're seeing. It's not, but then once I was trying to write that novel, I was quite seriously trying to write that novel. Then it wasn't a toe dip. It was something that I sort of tried to set some deadlines with and go from there. And so I basically wrote it in 2015, sort of late 2014 to early 2016, kind of in that, maybe it was about a year and a half for the multiple drafts, because I probably did 4 or 5 drafts maybe before I went. And my drafts are usually a start to finish draft, not a fixing a typo draft, like real drafts. So
I don't let myself count those as extra drafts. Those are and that just happens whenever.
Exactly. But I mean real drafts. So that was, maybe a little less than a year, about a year and a half, give or take. With that's including I would usually take a couple month break in between them. So, write for 2-3 months, take a couple month break, right? And then I started querying. And that was a very long process for my first novel, but I did get representation, and then started writing my second novel. But that first novel didn't sell. and I landed up switching
9/11
agents.
novel.
Yeah, so that novel, I mean, it sort of got the like, really like it, but just don't want, that kind of that amorphous feedback that I think when you go on submission is awfully hard to hear because you don't entirely know what to do with it. But I mean, but that's a big part, I think, for a lot of writers. That can be a big part of submission. I know one of my favorite YA books of all time is a book that my mentee wrote that hasn't sold, and it's gotten really close. And that's, an unfortunate side of the business. It's so competitive that there's work that is great, but just doesn't find the right home. I mean, in retrospect, I'm glad my current book is my debut. I feel like it's a better book, but so I wrote that one. In the meanwhile, I landed up switching agents. And then, so I finished this book, and then it was a while before I signed with my months before I signed with my new agent. So that was 2019 that I signed with her. And we went on sub in 2020. And
that's Molly Ker Hawn.
Pardon? Yeah, Molly Ker Hawn, yeah.
Gotcha. And the rest is history.
And the rest is history, as they say. Exactly. So I feel like I was working at it for a while, but and that might sound like a slow process, but I also think it's actually pretty typical for like when I talk to my writer friends. I mean, the whole idea, it's like the decades-long overnight success, right? Like.
Well, 2011 to I'm talking to you here in 2021, you're debuting in 2022. Yeah. That's mind-blowingly fast by comparison to several of the folks we've talked to on the show.
Yeah, well, it's funny. My non-writer friends are like, "You're so persistent. You wrote 2 books," and I'm just like, "Oh, you have no idea." But I mean, and it's sweet, and they're being complimentary, but it's like once you're in it, Rob, you know the truth. Like, it's a long haul. As you said, it's a long haul. If you knew what was ahead of you, you might not get in. But obviously, I'm very glad I have.